As a collector, I like bulk, man. I just love having a ton of cards to play around with and build decks with, and it's just a lot of fun to have a ton of cards just lying around everywhere, man. And I want to talk about specifically in this video the secondary market and the collectability around the alpha commons, which is Welcome to Wrath commons, the first edition ones, and then the Arcane Rising first edition common cards and rare cards a little bit, but mostly commons for Alpha, Welcome to Wrath, and Beta, which is Arcane Rising, for Flesh and Blood. And just off the bat, I want everyone to know that I hold a significant amount of bulk for both of those sets, first edition. And I just want to be totally transparent with you guys that, like, I am inherently biased for everything I'm going to say for the rest of this video and for every other video that I've ever made. I'm very biased towards bulk because I have a lot of it. And I don't really want to disclose at this time my current position, but it would just shock you, and it's very large. And I don't mean to brag, but I'm just telling you that it is a significant amount. I usually don't really go into detail with stuff like that, but yeah, it is it a significant amount in my mind. And yeah, and again, this is not investment advice. This is just my story. I'm Bronson, and this is how my life all gets started with bulks. And I first wanted to go through that, man. I wanted to bring you back in time, tell you about my childhood, and go in a little detail of why I like bulk. Because a lot of people, they like that lean collection, they like that sleek lean collection of cold foils and all that stuff, and I'm not like that. I like a fat collection. I like a big boned collection, you know what I mean? I like it big. I just love having a bunch of cards. And the reason for that is, man, when I was a kid, I had a group of friends, and we would just buy a bunch of common Magic the Gathering cards. And we would buy thousands and just have them all around. And, at the time, there's a lot of cards to go through there because there's a lot of different sets. And I just love doing that. I could do that for hours, man. I wouldn't even build a deck. I didn't care. I would literally just, sort through the cards and like pull the ones to the side that I liked. And I loved the artwork. I didn't even know what the set symbols did or the rarity. I didn't give a shit. I just loved the cards, and it was fun just going through all the cards and sorting them out. And just that was my jam. And when I got into Flesh and Blood, I had the same kind of mindset. I started into Flesh and Blood, and I started researching the game. And at the time, I didn't really want to spend too much money on Welcome to Wrath booster boxes. They were too much out of my price range. They were $200, $300. Too much, man. And of course now they're what, 2, 3 grand, in March 2021. But I digress. But at the time, back when I started getting in the Flesh and Blood around the October 2020 range, I just wanted the bulk. I just wanted a bunch of cards lying around so I could create decks and have a lot of fun with commons. And what's great about Flesh and Blood that a lot of people don't realize is that you can make good decks with the commons for the classes and the generics. And of course, mind you, if you are playing in tournaments and trying to, be the best there is, of course the legendary equipment is most likely needed for Blitz, especially because you get the extra health points on the armors and such. And it is generally, better to have a lot of high rarity cards in your deck. I'm not going to debate that. But what I'm saying is that if you look at even those competitive decks, there's a lot of bulk commons in them. There's a lot of commons that make up a good deck in Flesh and Blood. It's not like you have like only rares, only majestics and super rares and legendaries. Done. Like that's a deck. No, 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 no. I mean, I would hazard to argue that most decks contain around 50% or more of common cards, which really intrigued me, man. And when I first got into the game, I realized, wow, these cards are powerful. Because when I looked at Magic the Gathering and they had the alpha and beta sets, you'd have these really weak cards. Like there's this one called Flight, and it just gains, a creature gains flying for 1 turn. And there's so many better cards than that. I mean, there's all these other creature cards that are 1/2s or 0/1s. The creatures are very not powerful at all. I mean, there's subsequent sets past alpha and beta that have made so many better cards than what was printed in the old set. And I think that's why the commons really didn't have that much demand. They didn't have too much upward mobility. There's no organic demand of someone saying, I want to put flight in my deck. I want to make a flight deck. Buckle up on the airplane. We're going to make a flight deck. No, no, no. Nobody cared about that. But when you look at Flesh and Blood commons, even if you were like, well, I don't like, X card, right? I don't like Scar for Scar Blue. I still think it has really good, purpose later on. I think all those cards can be used in a deck, and it's not like cards will be printed in the future. And this is the key point. I don't think for Flesh and Blood cards will be printed in the future for Welcome to Wrath and Arcane Rising. They totally 100% better, and you should always pick that versus the older sets. I think that the cards that they printed in the common slot are just powerful. They are all very reasonably powerful, and they can be used, throughout like the entirety of Flesh and Blood TCG. And I don't think they're gonna make like a Scar for a Scar version card where it does 5 damage for a red pitch instead of 4 and go again. I mean, granted, I could be wrong, but from what I've seen and from all their sets so far, and the 3 sets, they have tried to keep the power level, relatively in line. And you might say, Bronson, okay, I agree with you, or maybe I don't agree with you, Bronson. But let's say that that is true. I mean, over the long run, cards that have usage in the future are going to be desired. So it really begs the question, how collectible are those cards? And I've said again, I'm very biased because I own a shit ton. But overall, if you have these cards that people can pimp out their decks with, they're going to be a lot of money. And when I say a lot of money, maybe it'll, each common card, I don't know how much it'll go up to. I mean, I was purchasing them for around 4 to 5 cents a card, but I was buying in bulk. I was buying in like 1,000, 2,000 plus lots. And when I was doing it, I was reaching out to different people in eBay realm and everywhere around. I was just saying, hey man, you got bulk? I like bulk. I want to make decks and have fun, right? So here's how it really started. So I was doing this because I just wanted the cards. And I was a nice guy. You know me, man. I'm Bronson. I'm a very likable, nice guy. And after the transaction, I'd be like, hey, man, thanks very much. Consider me next time. And I really appreciate this deal. And what was funny is after October, you go into, November and December, there were still stores that remembered me buying their bulk. And they said, yo, man, they'd contact me a month later and say, hey, you want this bulk for alpha beta bulk for 4 cents 5 cents a card. And it's just like, even though I had enough bulk myself, I in my mind I looked at the price tag and I was like, oh man, that's a good deal. I don't really need it, but I'll take it. So I kept buying and buying and buying. And I know I made a video in the past that showed my collection at that point in time. And yeah, I definitely have a lot more than that. That really really just scratches the surface for the amount of common bulk that I currently have. And everyone's doing their own thing, and that's what's great in Flesh and Blood. And people who are collecting and investing and all that stuff, they're doing their own thing. And I just want to put out there too is that uh, you might say, well, Bronson, you prevented people from getting into the game. Why did you do that? And I don't like people like you. I don't like people like you who buys all the cards out for people and they can't play Flesh and Blood. And that is a good point. And to that, I will retort: if you think about Flesh and Blood, the only limiting factor of playing the game at really a competitive level is the legendary, majestics, and super rare cards. Those are the big linchpins. If you do not have those cards, then you really can't compete. And I have looked, I've been around since October. You could always buy Welcome to Wrath bulk via, Alpha Edition, Unlimited. You could always buy bulk on eBay whenever you wanted. So it's not like I was preventing anyone from playing the game at all. I mean, anyone could easily have gone there, or any number of stores, or any number of people and said, "Hey, man, you got bulk? Can I buy it?" And they could have done the same thing. Would they have gotten the same good rate as me? Possibly not. But that's because I was good at negotiating, and I'm a pretty nice guy. So, I didn't really prevent. Now let's say I had, 20 Masco Momentum cold foil cards and I was holding that. Well, yeah, I kind of would be a little bit preventing people from getting the game. But at the end of the day, we're all adults, man. And I don't really care. I mean, everyone can buy whatever they want, collect whatever they want. That's the beauty of this game. It's really great where you can, put money wherever you want. But yeah, just to reiterate, I first just wanted the cards because I wanted to play with them. I wanted to, you know, get them because I wanted to build decks and all the other stuff with my friends, and I did that. That was a very successful thing. I got a ton of bulk at first, but then I just kept getting more type of people reaching out to me and say, "Yo, Bronson, you want this? I heard you do this," and that is when I kinda slowly but surely started acquiring more and more and more to where now I'm sitting on a good amount. And, I'm happy, I'm happy with the collection I have, and of course, that's my type of collecting. I like that. But other people are different, man. Other people like Heart of Fandales, the Fable cards, or, the set collecting with, and I have one near complete set of Welcome to Wrath Alpha and Arcane Rising, and I'm very happy for that. But other people like they'll just collecting the legendaries or just collecting the promo cards, and that's cool too. I definitely like those cards as well. But I just think that bulk is really, really overlooked because you have to take into consideration. I mean, even if the card's worth 10 cents, I mean, it's the alpha version of Flesh and Blood, and that's the card. So, I mean, it's the first printing of that card, which is huge. I mean, that and the rainbow foil of Alpha Welcome to Wrath or Beta, the Arcane Rising. If you have like the first ed, I think that will command a pretty good premium in the future. And not only are multiple factors out there in the world happening, but if you think about just a seller trying to sell one of those cards, right? In the future, let's say in 2 to 3 years, you cannot price it below $1 because who's gonna waste all their time to sell a card for a buck online and then like pay the eBay fees and PayPal and you have to pay the shipping postage stamp? I mean, even for a play set of three or a play set of two, like common Welcome to Wrath cards, right? Let's just focus on that as my examples. It's gonna be hard for them to price it at a buck. So I think just because of the inherent expenses of selling cards, those cards will go up. But then you also have the demand from the collectors out there of the first printing of that card. And when you have that, that also increases the demand of commons. But not only that, but you have the players of Flesh and Blood who just want to subtly pimp out their deck with a 2019 versus a 2020 year at the bottom of their card. Those people exist. And when they see these cards, it drives up demand because they can play with these cards. It's not like other TCGs where, that the alpha print of a set had weak common cards that were quickly replaceable over time. Flesh and Blood, in my mind, in my opinion, I can't say this for certain, but up to this point, all the common cards of Welcome to Wrath are definitely, usable. You can use them in a certain strategy in a deck, and you've got to imagine that certain weak cards currently in Welcome to Wrath will have a lot more impact in the future with future sets like Monarch and Kingdoms. If they release some sort of new ability or new type of gameplay in Flesh and Blood, then some of the commons in Welcome to Wrath or Arcane Rising, they might synergize very well with future sets, increasing their demand. And I think that that's really, really an overlooked thing is that those cards, I think, who knows? Who knows what's going to happen? I mean, again, I'm totally biased on what's happening. I just love talking about this subject because I haven't talked about it in a while because I don't want to, influence too much, even though I don't really. But overall, man, the bulk commons and the card just usage, right? If you think of this, there's this word called power creep for trading card games, and power creep is how powerful the card is. Where does it compare? And you can definitely see this in other TCGs. Let's say Magic the Gathering, and I love Magic. I'm just using draw a comparison because it's everyone knows Magic, and you'd have a creature card, and it's like a 1/2 creature for 1 mana. But then you could also have another creature for 2/2, 1 mana, or a 3/2 for 1 mana. You can have all these different cards. And if you think about it, the 3/2 is always better than the 1/2 card. So you have an easily replaceable card. So you can see that the power creep is not balanced in this equation. Whereas Flesh and Blood, I think that currently, and granted, it's only been out for a year and a half, so it's got lots of leg room to grow and new sets to come out. But I for sure think that they're going to keep it relatively, equal. And with new sets coming out, it will be really interesting to see how common cards evolve with their price point on the secondary market because, maybe they have some new way of being used that will really drive up their price and that's what's I really think is good and ultimately man I'm a collector. I love playing Flesh and Blood. I love the lore and everything, and the lore is what really got me into wanting to buy more. So initially I bought what I needed for bulk, but then I delved into the lore. And I know this is late in this video. I delved into the lore, and I figured some stuff out that just made me completely fall head over heels with this game. And from that point on, I just wanted to buy as much as I could, and to as much as I could reasonably afford because it was just so beautiful, and I just wanted as much as I could get. But man, I'm not rich. I'm not too wealthy, and I couldn't really afford the really expensive expensive things back in 2020 and I more gravitated towards the book because it just felt right to me. It was like my childhood coming alive again, man, of all these bulk cards that I can sift through and have fun. Even though I had more than enough that I needed, I just kept getting offered really, and it was from a couple different places that I shall you know uh, have nameless here. But yeah, I mean, just overall, I was just nice and basically said, "Yo, I'm paying you. I'll pay for this amount of money for bulk commons." And sometimes they offer something, and I'd say, "Yep, that works," or negotiate with them. But something else to take into consideration is that there are stores out there, many different which ways around there, who have done box openings on a pretty decent scale. When they do box openings, the main ticket items are those legendaries, the fables and majestics, super rares. Those are the ticket items that sell on sites, and those are easy to sell, and they go fast because people want them to use in their decks. Now the bulk commons are really tough for these sellers and stores because it's hard to move that much stuff. And when you're moving stuff that costs literally 4 cents and 5 cents and 10 cents, it's hard to really recoup the expense of shipping that thing. So you really have to increase the value. So ultimately, a lot of these stores, they literally what they do is they like to get like a big mailing box like this right here. I know you can't see it, but just a big box and just put everything that they can in the box and then just say, hey, selling this for $150. Who wants this box? Because they just need to get rid of it. They can't have all these bulk commons lying around their store. And when they have them, it's more of a business opportunity for them to just get rid of it for, just pennies on the dollar, and then get the money, and then that be that. Because if they didn't do that, there'd be like boxes everywhere around the store with bulk from all these different TCGs. I mean, it's just how it is. And you might say, well, Bronson, can't they sell singles from them? And yes, they can. But the problem is, like I said before, if you have a playset of head jabs, your three blue pitch head jabs. I mean, people aren't gonna be willing to pay that much for that card. I mean, the only way that it makes sense is if you sell it in store, because then you don't have to pay the shipping costs. But if you sell them, three blue head jabs for 25 cents each, that's 75 cents. But okay, then you pay what for shipping? The postage stamp for 55 cents, and then somebody's ass has to like do all this labor to first list the item on their store, and then once it sells, take down the customer information and do all that stuff and ship to the post office, and then on top of that, deal with customer complaints if they may arise, and just go all through all this hassle, right? And think about it. When you're doing this for one or two or three cards, if you're doing this on a scale of like 20 sales, it's no big deal. But when you have a bulk box of 2,000 common cards, that is a lot of work. That is a ton of work for not much reward. So it's a lot easier to give your bro Bronson an email and say, yo, Bronson, I got a big box full of Flesh and Blood cards. I know you go crazy for bulk. That's your thing. That's what you get off to in life. So would you pay, I don't know, 100, for this big box of cards? And yeah, that's when I came in. And no, something I want to note at the end, and I'm not too much of an investor type person. I definitely have thought about different opportunities in Flesh and Blood cards, and I most likely have, I have gone into different buying opportunities with that perception. And I am more of a margins guy. And when you think about margins, I'm talking about percentage margins. We're talking about if you buy something for $5, you sell it for $10, you made 100% on that margin, which is huge. And when you buy a trading card for 5 cents each, and it goes from 5 cents to a dollar. You just multiplied that by 20, by 20. It's a factor of 20, which is insane. Because if you had gotten a card for, let's say, $20, it would have to go to 400 to make that 20 times of your initial cost basis. Did you follow me there? So 20 to 400 is the same as 5 cents to a dollar. So when you have thousands of cards lying around in bulk from first edition, Welcome to Wrath or Arcane Rising, and they go from, pennies to a buck, I mean, your margins on your initial investment are huge. And that's something to consider, and it's something to consider, but you don't have to because I'm just a normal guy in a normal room. Not investment advice here. It's just how my feeble brain works of marginal stuff. But I will tell you a counterpoint to that. It's better to have a lean type of investment outlook in my mind from what I've seen other people do, because Shianas and Fable cards and the Heart of Fandale and all these really flashy cards will always have demand. People will always want those things because they are special, they are incredibly limited. When you look at a alpha blue head jab, I mean, how many of those exist? It must be thousands. And when you have thousands versus, 2,000, then okay, this is this is so much more limited than this, and it's also very flashy. It's always going to have high demand, which means less risk. It's going to be less risky to put your money in general in those really flashy top tier cards because they are limited and people want them versus the bulk and doing that kind of realm. And I want to lead into the thing that I'm really kind of curious about is the print run and what that's going to mean for Flesh and Blood First Edition. And I've had my speculations. I don't know if it's going to be released anytime soon. Maybe for Monarch, so people are more focused on money going back into first edition cards. I could definitely see that shift because when Unlimited came out for Flesh and Blood for Welcome to Wrath Arcane Rising, it's funny, a lot of the money went right back into first edition. It just like people realized they were faced with this product and they said, "Wait a minute. If this is the second printing, we want to buy the first." And they just all the money went there. It's funny how that happened because there's a lot of negative sentiment around that, because Flesh and Blood was creating these new cards and the supply is going up, that, and demand stayed the same, price would go down because there's more supply of these cards out there. But because Legend Story Studios was very smart and timed a very hype level of information and new news around that release, they increased the demand by a shit ton. So that increased the price, but it mainly pushed it towards the first edition stuff that people knew that was collectible. And it's just very interesting. And I think that not a lot of people are talking about the commons in Flesh and Blood. The commons are very, very not talked about and really not discussed because it sounds insane. It sounds completely insane, and it could be. It could be a pipe dream. It could be ridiculous, and overall, I don't think I want to get rid of my position anytime soon. I'm very happy with my collection. I'm insanely happy with and proud of my collection, and I'm happy. And I am really curious in the future how much percent of the print run I own. I don't think it's a full percent. I would be very shocked, but it's gonna be very cool to see because that is going to be a huge driver for those cards. For any first edition card, when you know the print run, that is going to be big hype news. When you have that news, then you can use that number into calculations of how rare something is compared to other things. And when you do that, then you can really, really decide what those common cards are worth because, you know, 4 to 5 cents is pretty low. And when you have a booster box, this is another key point is that when a booster box price is $3,000 for Welcome to Wrath Alpha, that means that all the value from that box needs to be in the box. So the more the box increases, the more the card price in them increases. And that's something big too, because only so many dollars can go to that Fable card. So it really can be allocated more towards the other cards because they are limited in a sense. And I know you've heard me talk for a good portion of time now. And the reason for that, man, is this shit is very complicated. There's so many different moving parts. There's a bunch of different angles and different viewpoints to see this as. And ultimately, investing or collecting in bulk commons is is weird, man. And I don't know what it's gonna do long term. And it really doesn't matter too much for me at this point. I really like my collection. It's fat, it's big boned, and I love it. But I think it's definitely gonna catch people off guard. That's really what like my point is, and just to give you guys transparency. If you hear me talking in the future about bulk commons and rares for any set or for any of the for, alpha or beta, I've got a lot. I've got a ton, and it's really going to be interesting to see how it plays out and how the market really reacts to certain news coming out, especially with the print run. That is going to change the game for it, and just over time, man. I mean, you know, a lot of people don't understand that this game this game has not been around for very long, like a year and a half. And these are the card prices that you have after a year and a half. How many, bulk sets are there going to be for Welcome to Wrath Arcane Rising in another year, 2, 3 years out there? Not too much. I mean, even though they printed a lot of those cards, and they did, there's thousands of those cards most likely, it's still going to be pretty hard to come by, especially in near mint condition. And that's another key point is attrition. How many cards of these got lost over time or destroyed or people played with and just threw them out because they didn't care or they didn't believe in the game. They played a sealed event back in early 2020 and they're like, this is all right. And they just threw away their common cards or didn't really care about them. And even after that, like people who just played with the common cards for Welcome to Wrath and stuff, and that's a big key point there. So how many near mint common cards will there be in a couple years? We don't know, and not only that, and they think about the longer term, man, and that's another key point of where my mind goes. When you look at the 5 to 10 year lifespan of this game, and I fully believe that this game will last a very long time because it's just run by a really legit company, Legend Story Studios, small group, low expenses, high revenue. You can't go wrong. I mean, so far they've made money hand over foot, it seems, and their products are highly desirable. So I can see them going for a very, very long time. But that's just the financials of it. But when you look at everything else that they have, which is amazing IP, and they have hype, demand, and a great product, then that's even more. But ultimately, it's going to be interesting how things play out because it definitely is not talked about. People don't really talk about the power creep as much. People do. People have said stuff to me about power creep, and it is really something that the cards are very well balanced. And what will that do over the course of 5 to 10 years to these cards when more people want to pimp out their deck and say, "Hey, I have a full alpha deck. I have a full alpha Welcome to Wrath deck, you know, that's going to be something you could say. And what's going to be the price tag on that, especially the commons? I mean, and when commons make over 50% of your deck, what's going to happen there? And there's a lot of other factors too. It's like how many cards of unlimited will be produced, or how many of those generic cards in Welcome to Wrath will be reprinted in other sets. That might drive the price down too. But like we've all seen in the past, people don't really give a shit about that. Welcome to Wrath Unlimited got produced, and literally, guys, the only difference is literally the set symbol, which is better looking on Unlimited, and then the date changed from 2020 to 29 from 2019 to 2020. So it's only literally the date and this little symbol changed. But other than that, it's the same card. But everyone didn't care. They just went to the first edition ones because they thought they were more valuable because they're first edition. And well, guess what? They are more collectible. Congrats, you solved the riddle. But to that point, what's going to happen in the future when those cards are reprinted and more people need them for certain decks? It's just going to be a wild ride, and ultimately it's up to you guys what you want to do with putting money in different places. All I have to say is whenever I put money into stuff for Flesh and Blood and anything in life, man, I do not risk anything. I have a very low risk tolerance overall in the sense of you know I am fine regardless of what happens to these cards, and I really don't care because I love Flesh and Blood. I love the game. It's amazing. It's just so well created that I just wanted a piece of its history, and the way I like to have that is in bulk, man. I just love my bulk, and overall, there's a lot of great ways to get into the game, and just really excited for the future. But just thought this was a interesting discussion video of me being a little bit more transparent for you guys because yeah, I try not to move the market too much because I don't really care to do that. But yeah, it just seems like a really really cool thing. And just to let you know, I mean, there's thousands of these cards in my mind. There's thousands of bulk commons. But you have so many different factors that's going to limit the supply and increase the demand. So, overall, just another big topic here in the end is that the amount of supply is also really reduced by the amount of people who kept Welcome to Wrath sealed. And from what we've heard from other content creators and just other people in general, people say that there's a lot of Vulcan's Wrath sealed, and you can see this. Saint from Fabled Hunters. He has tons and tons in his background. He said he owns I don't know 5 to 10% of the print run, and then there's other people out there too who own X number of boxes out there, and you have to realize that no matter what the print run for those common cards are, those boxes are most likely never going to see the light of day. Those cards are going to stay in that box till the end of time because nobody wants to open it because it's better sealed and you get that premium on it for a sealed product. So that's a part of the supply that's never going to be in the market. So that's going to reduce supply. Along with what I said before, which is attrition, where the cards get damaged, destroyed, lost, burned down, waterlogged, who knows? They get destroyed. There's not much supply there. And then, also just, overall the demand is going to increase when people find new uses for these old cards. And like I said before, the demand for them is going to be there in my mind because they are always going to be used and have usability. There's not going to be a readily available substitute or a total replacement in my mind that's 100% better than the old card. I think the old cards are still going to have good power creep. So yeah, that was pretty well detailed and went through that, but I hope you enjoyed listening to my my rantings of my big bulk common lots of Flesh and Blood and hear my origin stories because you know I I don't know. It's comical when I think back on all the different transactions that I've made because, I don't think I really would have done those if I was just constantly trying. It's not like I tried. In the beginning I did, but eventually people just started coming to me and I was like, yeah, like I'd love to do that. And I think it worked out for, both parties at the time. And ultimately, man, I just cherish these cards. I love these cards so much. And, there's some times too where it broke my heart because I would get, and I'm just saying this story at the end because, I know this is kind of weird, but I would get this big bulk box, right? Huge box, 3,000 common cards from Arcane Rising, right? 3,000. And the stores would literally just put the cards in the box and they would all like smush together so where they were like supporting each other. But ultimately, man, a lot of times when I saw that, there'd be at least 8 to 10 cards that were really bent or really, jagged. And when I saw that, it just broke my heart. It just hurt me, man. I would look at a bent card or a card that was like ripped or torn or all that stuff, and I feel really bad. And I know it sounds really silly because I literally had like 3,000 common cards in front of me, and there's like this, 2 to 3 to 5 cards that were just bent or damaged. But I looked at them like, oh man, like I don't like this, and it hurt. And that really just speaks to the fact that man, I just love the cards, and I want to keep them well preserved. And obviously, after that, I bought a bunch of these, BCW 1,000 count boxes right here to hold my collections. So I would take them out of some stupid ass eBay box that were, jumbled around and whatnot, and I put them in a very protected box like this that holds, I think, 1,400 Flesh and Blood cards. But, it just speaks to I just want to preserve it. I want to preserve it, hold it long term, and I just want to have something to be happy about. And ultimately, I've tried to just really keep it safe because I'm mainly collector. I'm not BSing anyone out there. I love the game. I love everything about it, but mainly I just like to collect. It's a fun little hobby of mine. But yeah, that's a whole story really of me and bulk collecting and what I think about bulk commons for the beginning sets. But ultimately, it's really up to you what you want to do. But I definitely think that long term, we'll definitely see something with them because of all the aforesaid things. But thanks for watching, man. Appreciate you tuning in and let me know what you think because it's pretty interesting. Cheers.